Imagine waking up tomorrow to breaking news. The war in Ukraine is finally over. Celebrations erupt worldwide, but in Russia it feels different. Because even if the guns fall silent, Russia's crisis is far from finished. The war was never the root problem, it was just the symptom of something deeper. My name is Elvira Bary. I was born in the Soviet Union, and for the past 2 decades, I've closely studied Russia's political and social fabric. Today, I'll take you beyond the headlines to show you what will happen in Russia the day after the fighting stops, and why understanding this matters more than ever. Because the choices made inside Russia in the coming years won't just shape Russia's future, they'll shape ours too, and the world we live for our children. Russia is the last empire still standing in Europe. It's simply late to collapse. Throughout the 20th century, Europe transformed in two ways. First, through rapid urbanization, then by dismantling empires. Empires no longer help societies grow, they hold them back. By collapse, I don't necessarily mean losing territory. I mean the deeper breakdown of imperial power structures built on violence and repression. Every European empire has crumbled. Even the Soviet Union fell apart. But then, in the 21st century, it tried to reassemble itself. Why? Because while technology moves fast, human lifespans are long. The same people cling to power for decades. Without real external pressure, historical change slows to a crawl. In early times, weak governments were swept away by revolutionaries or foreign enemies. But today, Russia has too few young people for revolution, and its neighbors have no appetite for war. When this war ends, Russia will likely drift toward becoming something like an orthodox version of Iran. The elite have every incentive to keep the population uneducated and isolated. As global demand for raw resources declines, a long term trend, the state will increasingly squeeze its taxpayers. To stop people from fleeing, it must convince them the outside world is terrifying and dangerous. This makes nationalism inevitable. The state will indoctrinate children through schools. I explain this fully in another video, while silencing alternative voices and cutting off outside information. There will be repression, but not mass terror. Just enough fear to maintain control, coupled with constant demands for ritual submission. Certain behaviors will become symbols of loyalty. In Iran, it's strict compliance with religious dress codes. In Russia, it will be glorification of World War II and absolute obedience to official narratives about Ukraine. Challenge it, and you become a target. Meanwhile, the FSB and other power structures will divide what's left of the country's wealth, terrorize the population, and fuel paranoia about foreign spies. Privately, they'll send their children to Western schools, hire Western lawyers, and shop in Europe. That's the nature of this new aristocracy, deciding who is allowed and who is not. The leadership will grow older and more brittle. They'll try passing their power and wealth to their children, but the children aren't their fathers. They grew up pampered, not hardened by political battles. Many were raised by tyrannical parents who broke their will early, and some simply have different personalities. A father may be a ruthless commander, but his son might be a dreamy pathfinder. If you're curious about these personality types, check out the Sphinx method on my website. You might discover something surprising about yourself. Parades will continue. Chest beating rhetoric won't stop, but real policing will devolve into absurdity. Jailing young women for rainbow earrings, something I've covered in another video, while actual threats go unnoticed. Russia's external enemies, they'll be defeated because they never showed up to fight. Putin claims he's battling NATO, Yet, according to Ukrainian estimates, Russia has already lost nearly 1 million soldiers killed or wounded. NATO's losses? None. Russia's ruling elite is old, many in their 70s, but modern medicine might keep them going for years. This gerontocracy just wanted to preserve their power. The chances of meaningful reform? Almost zero. Beneath the very top is a pervasive belief that collapse is inevitable. So the rational choice is to steal as much as possible while there's still time. Then move the loot abroad to places with stable property rights. In this environment, everyone watches each other, waiting to strike first. Each official has a file held by the FSB, constantly proving loyalty, ignoring law, honor, and logic, just to avoid becoming the next target. Only one type survives: shameless, opportunistic crooks loyal only to power. That poisons every decision the country makes. This entire system of political control is possible because nearly all of Russia's wealth is concentrated in the hands of the ruling elite. The financial structure itself is designed for centralized control. Money is collected from individuals, businesses, and regions, funneled into Moscow, and then redistributed wherever the leadership decides, building bridges, funding wars, bribing warlords, or paying internet trolls to flood Western media with fake public opinion. As a result, everyone, from federal ministers to village school principals, depends entirely on the state. Anytime someone builds an independent career or earns income outside the government control, they inevitably start thinking too freely. That's why the state systematically crushes local initiative and eliminates independent wealth. In today's Russia, a career means attaching yourself to a state controlled budget stream. And after the war, as state revenues shrink, competition for those budget streams will turn even more vicious. But the regime cannot afford to loosen its grip. Independent business breeds independent thinking, and independent thinking creates political threats. That's the real fear behind every crackdown, which means a prolonged economic stagnation is almost guaranteed, much like what we have seen in Iran for decades. Foreign trade will remain a major problem. Russia's reputation in the West is broken and won't recover anytime soon. The stigma now touches every Russian citizen. We already see it in the struggles of Russian immigrants abroad, even those who opposed the war, facing visa issues, employment challenges, and growing social suspicion. As for China, Russia's supposed strategic partner, Beijing has seen Russia's military weakness up close. They view Russia as unstable and unreliable. Don't expect salvation from the East. Russia's network of dictator allies is also collapsing. Syria, Iran, Venezuela. What remains is resource trade, mostly with China, some with India, and scattered deals with Europe. That money flows straight into the military industrial complex. But this isn't real economic growth. In many struggling towns, new military factories offer decent wages. But if those factories close, mass anger would follow. The state simply cannot afford the unrest that would come with demilitarization. Meanwhile, Russia is falling hopelessly behind in industries that define the modern world: information technology, AI, and advanced research. It lacks skilled personnel, infrastructure, and most critically, access to global scientific exchange. Paranoia accelerates this decay. Security services arrest scientists for attending international conferences or even giving lectures over Zoom. Researchers stay silent or leave entirely. Russia bleeds talent with every passing month. As new military technologies evolve, much of Russia's Soviet era arsenal will become useless scrap. And Russia has no path to catch up. It will keep falling further behind, technologically isolated and economically stagnant. Many have died. Many more are wounded, and even more live with deep trauma. The entire country is trapped in paralyzed stress with no clear future. At first, there was hope that Russia would restore Soviet borders, feel powerful again, respected, admired. But now, a darker realization is sinking in. Something has gone terribly wrong. Even those in charge seem lost. Among the war's supporters, many still believe that if they just push a little harder, somehow everything will work out. Those who oppose the war either shut down emotionally or leave, and many have already left for good. They take with them not only money and skills, but entire threads of Russia's fragile social fabric. When a great teacher leaves, hundreds of students lose more than a class. They lose mentorship, inspiration, potential. When a scientist leaves, they don't just lose their research, they lose an entire intellectual environment. When business leaders depart, they take technology, capital, and often entire teams. I have a friend who moved dozens of IT specialists to Portugal. They now pay taxes there. Their children grew up there, and most won't even think of returning. Even I have my example. I once ran the largest creative writing school in the Russian speaking world. I taught tens of thousands to write with humor and emotional power. But I had to shut it down. Sanctions made it impossible for people inside Russia to pay me. And I'm far from alone. By the way, if you want to see what kind of stories we were creating, check out my channel Elvira Bary Forbidden Books. You'll see exactly the kind of creative talent Russia is losing. There's no exact figures, but estimates suggest that since the war began, 350 to 400,000 people have left Moscow. That's the size of a small European city. They sold or rent their apartments. And who moved in? Provincial bureaucrats, retired security officers, pensioners from the power ministries. The same pattern plays out in St. Petersburg and other major cities. Meanwhile, in Russia's poorest regions, it's the underprivileged who are sent to fight. But their families, suddenly enriched by payouts, move into these larger cities, buying up real estate and reshaping the social map. Long term, this internal migration will have enormous consequences. This is not new. It's similar to what happened under Stalin, when unreliable elements were purged from Soviet cities. I described that process in details in my novel, The Prince of the Soviets. You'll find the link in the description. Beyond Russia's borders, relations are breaking as well. Ukrainians had been severed painfully. Nearly one-third of Russian families have Ukrainian relatives. In Soviet times, people were constantly relocated across republic borders. My own uncle ended up in Ukraine simply because his job sent him there. In some ways, it's a small mercy that he didn't live to see this war. Inside Russia, families are breaking too. Parents stop speaking to children, siblings cut each other off, friendships collapse. You realize someone you trust supports the war, and something inside you breaks. You may say, everyone has their opinion, but trust is gone. Because if they support invading neighbors and killing civilians, what can you ever expect from them? This fracture won't heal soon. In fact, it will likely deepen. And what happens to the patriotic movement after the war? Their purpose will vanish. Today, elderly women need socks for soldiers, organize charity drives, and feel needed. But when the need for socks disappears, what then? The couch warriors who cheered for victory will face bitter disappointment. There will be no Soviet version 2. So many sacrifices for nothing. Even those who stayed silent will grumble. Life was better before 2022. Why did we get involved in this? There will be nostalgia, escapism, fantasy worlds where reality feels optional. Then scapegoating. The state will blame the West. Some will blame themselves. Why didn't we protest? Why didn't we sacrifice more to stop it? But truthfully, there was never a real chance to protest. Unarmed civilians can't overthrow a heavily armed regime. Meanwhile, the demographic crisis will worsen. Birth rates have already fallen to levels not seen since 1942. Women don't want to have children in a country spiraling into chaos. Mass immigration from Central Asia will continue, while the share of elderly, unhealthy citizens grows, putting pressure on the state's budgets. And finally, another dangerous consequence: rising crime. The country is flooded with weapons brought home from the war. Many returning soldiers suffer from PTSD. It's a dangerous mix. If the West simply tries to defeat Russia, what it will get is terrorism. Terror is the weapon of the weak, of those who want to influence but can't, who feel excluded, humiliated, powerless. That's exactly why Iran turned to sponsoring terrorism. And I don't just mean bombs. Terror can take many forms: cyber attacks, kidnapping, sabotage, destruction designed to intimidate. And let's not forget, Russia has never been good at mass production, but it has always been surprisingly good at specialized, one off inventions. As technology shrinks, as drones get smaller and smaller, the last thing the world needs is a country capable of building Beetle sized drones that can strike anywhere. That's why helping Russia find a better path is critical. The old men in power will die eventually. The real question is, who comes after them? There won't be real democracy in Russia anytime soon. Democracy needs traditions, institutions, grassroots organizations, and independent financial resources. These don't magically appear even if Putin's regime collapses tomorrow. The key is not to repeat the mistakes of the 1990s, the fantasy that freedom from dictatorship automatically brings democracy. We've seen that fail repeatedly across the post Soviet space and in places like Iraq. Instead, we must deal with the reality we have. Study Russia's elite carefully. Who can we work with? Who might be able not to build a perfect democracy, but at least to secure a peace? The goal isn't perfection. The goal is stability. Identify people with clean enough hands, compatible values, and most importantly, the ability to make and honor agreements. Engagement doesn't mean recruitment, it means practical mutual deals. If you take power and don't abuse it, we will help you rebuild. These people must deliver real relief quickly. At its core, this conflict is about respect and dignity. Many Russians supported the war because they clung to the illusion that Russia once stood shoulder to shoulder with the United States as an equal global power. They believed that status was stolen, not lost through their own failures, but through foreign treachery and humiliation. Now they feel it's time to take back what was taken. The worst thing the West could do is humiliate them again. In the 1990s, Westerners flooded into Russia. Consultants, trainers, preachers, eager to teach Russians how to be proper Democrats, proper capitalists, proper Christians, as if they were eager students waiting for enlightenment. Even if someone is poor and backward, they still demand respect. If you arrive to lecture, not to listen, they'll smile, take your money, and trick you while you are at it. Trust me, Russians know how. You won't even realize you've been played. One of the West's greatest failures after the Soviet collapse was not investing serious time into understanding who they were dealing with. Leaders treated Russia like someone at a service window. Solve my problem, I don't care who you are. As long as Russia delivered cheap energy, nobody asked where the money went. That indifference helped build the dictatorship we face today. And it will cost far more to contain than it would have cost to manage intelligently in the 1990s. Today, we must do better. We must identify Russia's real social needs and meet them before the regime does. Offer people real, visible alternatives. Here's where it gets counterintuitive. The natural instinct is to cut Russia off completely, to build a moat filled with crocodiles and starve it of resources. Emotionally, it feels justified, but practically, it's dangerous. We've tried that before, after World War I with Germany, and what came of that? Nazism grew out of that exact hunger for respect. You don't love us? Fine. We'll love ourselves twice as hard. Our task is far more delicate. We need to reduce state resources, but increase opportunities for the people. Create alternatives that allow ordinary Russians to live, grow, and thrive without depending on the state. The regime survives by monopolizing contact with the outside world. We need to flip that logic. Support the regime, lose access. Behave like a normal person, gain opportunities. The simplest tool is culture. Build programs that help people share stories, build relationships, exchange ideas. Show them there is an alternative. We are not against you. We are ready to welcome you. You don't need an empire to feel respected. But most importantly, we need professionals to design a serious healing program. Russia carries enormous historical trauma. Its aggression is not the root cause, it's a symptom. I often play the role of therapist explaining why Russia behaves as it does. And when people begin to understand the roots of their pain, they at least gain the chance to change. But real healing requires a scientific foundation. Collective trauma, like personal trauma, repeats itself unless treated. It's like a child raised in violence and abuse. Yes, they are responsible for their actions, but very few can heal themselves without help. They need safety, role models, opportunities, dignity. Without that, nothing will work. After the war, people will seek healing, one way or another. Many will turn to religion, but qualified clergy are scarce. Few psychologists know how to treat national identity trauma. Millions have spent years being trained to hate their neighbors. How do you treat hatred? Who will even try? And the regime will do everything possible to keep that hatred alive. Hatred is its fuel. This isn't just a job for governments. This is a task for researchers, NGOs, psychologists, educators, and thinkers, those capable of applying serious intellectual precision and long-term strategy. If this gave you a deep understanding of what may happen to Russia the day after the war ends, please help me keep making this video. Share it, subscribe to this channel, join my think tank, or simply buy me a coffee. Every bit of support makes a difference. And most of all, thank you for watching, for staying curious, and for thinking critically.